Okay, here we go. Chapter 8. I know you're excited. We're going into the preschool years, the social and emotional development in the preschool years. My slideshow won't begin. There we go. I'm beginning. First, we're going to talk about emotional development. We're going to start with Eric and then go to Adler. Eric. Eric Erickson. Eric Erickson's psychosocial theory. Remember those stages that he says we go through. Those developmental stages are so powerful for you to recognize what's going on with your client based on their development. And if you don't resolve whatever crisis it is at that stage, then you will have problems later on. in his, golly, I've got a frog in my throat. In the preschool years, the stage is initiative versus guilt. This is where children are trying to have enough freedom to explore their environment, and they're encouraged and nurtured, and they're not, like they're made to feel bad, or they're not able to have those opportunities to do those things like tie their shoes or try to do something. We do it myself, right? And so you can either be strong and have initiative and drive, or be characterized by guilt. And you see these people come in, it's really interesting. And they're like, they can't tell me why they feel guilty, but they just have this overarching feeling that they are just guilty all the time. And typically floats back to issues in this time of their life when you start to do a really comprehensive assessment and talking about early childhood and what happened. Really, really fascinating stuff. And then it parallels, of course, Freud's psychosexual stages. So please remember that. And don't forget that. And Freud viewed child development, remember, through the psychosexual stages in which libido is focused on a particular erogenous zone. So the phallic stage, it occurs between 2 and 6, and that's when they become aware of genitals and the difference between males and females. And this is when the Oedipus and Electra complexes come out, and you know those, so I don't have to go over those again. Right? This is all review. Then we have Adler. He believed people could be understood by patterns of personalities. Remember the lifestyles. There were 4 goals of misbehavior. So with Adler, I obviously got something to drink. If you can tell, I'm talking better. But Adler, we're not going to go over all the parts of these because you know them from theories and group. But what's important here for lifespan development are what is happening in this lifespan and why. And so Adler, his theory says that there's 4 goals of misbehaving: wanting attention, getting power, revenge, and inadequacy. And they say attention seeking and power they're really Rudolf Dreikurs is the one theorist who created this, but he was under Adler. And revenge and inadequacy are ones that often may require counseling because there could be something else going on there. But attention seeking and power are really um, common, and it's kind of like attention seeking is like chewing a fly. So if you're on the phone and you're kind of talking and they keep talking, Adler says to ignore the behavior so it'll stop. And also just knowing what's going on with kids. They're trying to be noticed and why. And also trying to catch them being good. So if you're helping parents or you're helping with parenting, which you will because 99.9% of the time the problem with the child is the parent. And or some other adult in their life. So trying to figure that out, and also just trying to help know how to positive parent and do different things to help them, different strategies. And you can even reference this and say, hey, this is what's happening here. In power, child's trying to gain power, kind of proving that no one can have power over them. And the way that we talk about power is don't get in power struggle with your child, right? And making sure that you give the child lots of choices and not engage in petty things that are irrelevant, and allowing the child to have some sense of power and sense of self. You don't want to totally take all of that from them, but you also don't want to get them to trigger you. You want to remain calm. And sometimes I have people come in and they're so angry at their child for being a teenager and for saying, I hate you, mom, or whatever. And I say, it's completely normal for kids to get mad and say things like that. It's your response that matters. And so we know that kids and teens are going to get upset and do things sometimes that are erratic. But if we respond erratically as well and we get really mad and we act like, I can't believe you said that and you're in restriction for 6 months, then they're going to have a lot of problems and they're going to misbehave more in the long run. The third one, that revenge, is then the revenge seeking child's been hurt and is lashing out. Her sense of belonging comes from making others hurt as much as she has been hurt. The parent or teacher experiences feelings of hurt and may lash back. The use of punishment will just exacerbate the problem. So you got it. This is all really, really important for you, especially if you're going to work. Well, really, you're going to be working with either children or kids. So, children or adults. So you need to know this. And the final goal is that inadequacy. They feel inadequate and they feel hopeless. Don't throw in the towel or exhibit pity. The child with the goal of inadequacy is the most discouraged of all, and he will not benefit from praise. In fact, praise or gold stars and awards will feel hollow and fake. This child's in a need for encouragement. Adults should look for ways to authentically encourage. No criticism of the child. Parents, teachers should find a way to build the confidence. It's really, really important. And then, of course, we've got family constellation and birth order. You know all of these. Just kind of know the characteristics of oldest, second, and youngest child. And there's only two. I don't know if they touch on that, but only child as well is different. Family lifestyle. Again, what does this mean for development, for social and emotional health? So read through that. So highlight typical development trends that occur across specific life stages, beginning with single young adults to older adult stage. Okay, let's go to the Circumplex Model, which is probably something that you guys have not heard about yet. Before you get to Circumplex Model, I want to make sure that you read 197 and 198. Make sure you know the family systems theory, the horizontal stressors, vertical stressors. Read about the Clarks. And make sure you read through all of this. The different theorists, and then we get over here to Olson's Circumplex Model. And that's an interaction between how close family members are and how flexible they are, how much structure is in the family, how balanced they are. If they're more balanced and there's more cohesion and flexibility, the better that whole family system is able to deal with unexpected changes. I'm interested to know in your reflection this week. I'm interested to know, for one, I'm going to give you two forum responses to be a little tricky. But I'm really interested to know, how did your family handle the pandemic? What did you see go on? And I don't want you to say something you're not comfortable with, so please don't interpret it that way. But you can take it light if you'd like. You don't have to go super serious, or you can. But just reflect on your family system and how did they deal with unexpected changes of the pandemic. Forum response number 1 for Chapter 8 complete. All right, let's go to emotional competence. Emotional competence is really important, and the way that we become emotionally competent or having a high emotional IQ is to be able to self-regulate. And a lot of times children are not able to do that. They're not able to self-regulate and to have empathy because their needs weren't met in childhood. They have to be able to regulate themselves, and that part of the brain actually does not grow when children are not rocked. In fact, the swaying motion of children actually grows that area of the brain that stabilizes emotions. So if you're not completely developed in that area of your brain from that rocking and swaying, which is a natural thing we do for infants, but not all of them get it. And this is not in your text. It might be, but I learned it at a workshop. This brilliant doctor that I went and saw up in Atlanta on trauma in early childhood years ago, and that stuck with me because it made so much sense. But if you're not able to do that you have deficit in your brain. You actually can't do it, and we expect people to do it. We expect children to do it, and they actually physically can't. Okay, fear and anger. So as a therapist, if you're helping a child develop ability to understand emotion and control emotion, you may want to use books. I've actually picked some books at conferences that brought home for my own children that talk about anger, that talk about fear, that talk about all sorts of the range of emotions and joy and embarrassment and shame, and gives examples in children's language. Really hard for them to conceptualize at a certain age, but really important for you to do it in a way that's developmentally appropriate. Children's fears are normal. Children have lots of fears, and some of them are important because they protect them, i.e., strangers. And snakes, or something, just a big spider, they don't just go right up maybe and pick that up. And they're common fears across cultures, like the thing that I just mentioned, thunder, blood, etc. Of course, the temper tantrum, angry outbursts are really common until children learn to manage their emotions in a pro-social way. It's really important how we respond to that as adults. But reactivity is normal. We have to learn how to manage that and moderate it. And how do we cope? Coping is a huge part of what we do as therapists. And we have to help those kids, if they're not coping in an adequate way, we have to help them learn how to breathe. Or, Gray is highly reactive, far more than Helen, although she is more fearful, and that's probably from socialization because girls are naturally more fearful than boys. um, that could be from socialization, but it also could be from their development in that understanding. The repercussions maybe sooner, perhaps, but really, really important to Gray. I've taught Gray to breathe, to do, and I'll say breathe and calm your body down. And so I never had to do that with Helen, but he will take a breath, or he'll go off, or he'll kind of punch his fist in the air for a second. It's really funny. Instead of punching someone, um, and then he'll be okay. So it's just giving them outlets for their personalities. What do they need to be able to restabilize themselves? And also, really smart children often have really more trouble with that because um, their IQ and what they understand versus how they can convey what they understand. So, mental disorders in early childhood. We are looking for them to meet those milestones that we've been talking about, right? That they are riding their bike and that they're having friendships and they're playing and stuff like that. So there's all these different milestones that like you go in and they ask you about in your wellness visits with your pediatrician. I obviously have a lot of negative thoughts and feelings about the prevalence of early childhood mental disorders because I have my own bias, but um, I hope many people are hesitant to give meds at this age with their development. Unfortunately, I do see children with ADHD meds this early and at 5 years old, and it's very alarming to me. Um, 3 times as many boys are diagnosed as girls. Wondering what you think about that with ADHD. I think that's really hard to determine at this age. Oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. Also have my own thoughts about that. Again, boys are diagnosed more. They're characterized by anger, aggression, opposition, negative affect. I also wonder, are they playing outside? Are they eating and sleeping? And I've found so many times in the work that I do that those are things that are occurring. Screen time for 9 hours or whatever will create that. So children are supposed to use those gross motor skills. They're supposed to get out. They're supposed to use imaginative play. And when they don't get to do that, you see these problems. And it's just easier sometimes for teachers and people, especially the low SES. If you look in the Body Keeps the Score book, um, you know what? Let me pull up that stat for y'all. I think you'll enjoy hearing about that. Hang on. Be right back. You won't know that I'm going to be right back because I'm going to pause you, but I'll be right back. Wait, I am back. Okay. The number of people treated for depression has tripled over the past 2 decades. 1 in 10 Americans take antidepressants. I'm not anti-antidepressant. I think they're wonderful. But think about this one. Antipsychotics, Abilify, Risperdal, Zyprexa, Seroquel are the top-selling drugs in the United States. So they're more top-selling than antidepressants. Did you know that? In 2012, the public spent $1 billion on Abilify, more than any other medication. Number 3 was Cymbalta. That's antidepressant. Sold over $1 billion. I mean, this was 1.5 billion on Abilify. Even though it's never been shown to be superior to older antidepressants like Prozac, for which much cheaper generics are available. Medicaid, here we go, the government health program for poor, spends more on antipsychotics than any other class of drugs. In 2008, the most recent year for which complete data are available, it funded $3.6 billion on antipsychotics. The number of people under the age of 20, so here's the childhood stuff, the number of people under the age of 20 receiving Medicaid-funded prescriptions for antipsychotics tripled between 1999 and 2008. In 2013, Johnson & Johnson agreed to pay more than $2.2 billion in criminal civil fines that it had improperly promoted antipsychotic drug, Risperdal, to adults, children, and people with developmental disabilities. Bam! There you go. But nobody's holding the doctors accountable. Here we go. Here's the big thing. This should make you angry. 500,000 children in the U.S. currently take antipsychotic drugs. And who is it? It's the children from low-income families are 4 times as likely as private insured children to receive antipsychotic medications. These medications are used to make abused and neglected children more tractable. 19,000 children aged 5 and under were prescribed antipsychotics through Medicaid, 2008. I could keep going, but I won't. I'm getting a little fired up. All right, let's move on. So that helps you to understand an antipsychotic in a child that young is obviously that disorder doesn't come out too much later. So anyway, be advocates. Oh, I already talked about this, didn't I? Yep, moving on. Oh, we didn't talk about depression in kids. No, this really, to me, when we have these disorders in kids, I want to rule out trauma. Like, what's going on? Why is this happening? What's happening in their life? Are they not getting their needs met? Are they being abused? Why are they depressed? What is happening? But also, we know children are committing suicide, even children in elementary school. So don't ever forget to suicide risk assess children and find out what is going on, because there's some reason why they're feeling that way and they're not happy. Oh, I'm so ahead of myself here, but there is a large connection, obviously, between child maltreatment and mental health, mental disorders. So think about it. We just read about it, right? And typically what's wrong is there's abuse or neglect, or they're witnessing abuse. Look at this, 71% were victims of neglect. The problem is that it's not that they have these disorders. We are mandated to report child abuse, but often don't see it or don't understand it, or people are too busy. They've got too many students or too many people in their classroom or in their daycare that they actually can figure it out, and then what to do with it then, and then defects is overloaded, etc. So referring for counseling, we're doing a better job now than we were, but this is a huge problem. I was going to say something else about that. But it's often easier to manage because when you put them on an antipsychotic or antidepressant or ADHD meds, yeah, they're going to be better in the classroom. They're going to be better to deal with, right? But they were trying to communicate something with you with their behavior, and now you're giving them drugs that is just numbing their brain out, so they're actually able to sit in the classroom. So, all right, soapbox is over. Parental substance abuse. What I was going to say now. So what I was going to say. ACEs, Average Childhood Experience Study. We talked about this. Kaiser Permanente, 17,000 people, longitudinal study over the course of 25 years, and they found this dose-response relationship. So the more adverse childhood experiences that you have, like one being a parent with substance abuse, if you have 4 or more, you are highly likely to have all sorts of issues with social, emotional, physical health in the future. And so it's proven, we know it, and here it is right here. I mean, if your children, if they're dealing with these things, then this is what you're going to see. So these children of alcoholic families, sadness, mistrust, academic, social difficulties, taking on adult responsibilities. So again, having to get involved there as a clinician, right? Social development, biological approaches to social development. Let's see. Biological approaches, they see male and female differences as normal, natural, and necessary. There's the man as hunter hypothesis that proposes that men have always been hunters, and a result, being male is associated with aggression, ambition, leadership, and interest in technological innovation. You can only imagine how Dr. Deal, right? Yeah, you can only imagine. You know me, I'm such a feminist. Okay, moving on. Because men provided sustenance for the group, they were given a higher status than women. Okay, I'll just let y'all chew on that. Just tell me what you think about that, maybe. Oh yeah, men want to have as many children as possible to ensure their line. Women can only have limited numbers of children, so they set up the most highly successful and high-status men. These hypotheses are contradicted by archaeological and anthropology. But I'm really evidence. You guys, I can only imagine how much I'll laugh at me when you're listening to these. And that contradicted hypotheses is that women actually contributed far more to the sustenance of the group and were more like gatherers than hunters. The hypothesis is extremely flawed. I do not want to miss this. I forgot to say earlier, and if we were in class, I would back up. I want you to please know on page 204, table 8.1, the signs and symptoms of abuse and neglect. Copy and paste that, highlight it, um, keep that, okay? Because this is what you would be looking for as a clinician. What are these signs and symptoms? Are there unexplained burns, bites, bruises, black eyes, fading bruises, fear of parents, protest, crying when it's time to go home, shrinking at the approach of adults, injury, reports of injury by a parent or other adult caregiver, neglect, frequently absent, begs or steals for food, no medical care, dirty, not having clothes, no jacket, etc. No one's there to help them or take care of them. They're drinking or using drugs, sexual abuse. A big one for that is that unusual advanced sexual knowledge or behavior like is interesting. Sometimes I have clients who can't remember stuff in their childhood, and they'll remember some things like sexual things what they would do with their animals when they were 7. Okay, well that's not normal for them to know tons of sex acts to play with their stuffed animals. That's a good indication for some psychoed to say, it's not normal for a 7-year-old developmentally to know about all this stuff that you knew about. Without, where did you get that knowledge from? Bedwetting, incontinence, urinary issues, nightmares, refusing to change, difficulty walking or sitting, venereal disease. I mean, if they're a kid and they have a venereal disease, running away, and then emotional abuse, um, extremes in behavior, like either being compliant or demanding, either inappropriately adult-like or baby-like or fluctuating, attempted suicide, and reports lack of attachment to parent. Let's see how far we have to go. I don't know if I'm going to go over all these theorists again. We know psychoanalytic, right? We know, okay, maybe we'll talk about the bias. I actually have to get off of here for a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do, guys, is actually just go ahead and upload. For those of you who are Johnny on the spot and you're really up to date on everything and you've already like watched 6 and responded, at least I've got 7 in forum and I'll have half of 8 in forum up. And when I get back, I have to leave for a little bit, but when I get back, I can finish up. So I just don't want to rush through it. So you already have part of your forum response if you even want to go ahead and do that. Most of you have not gotten this far yet, but I will upload part 2 tonight. Okay, so until then, we're stopping on this one. I'll pick up on this one.